how the world will be in 2050. My name is Adel'S and I stand here to share with you how I, and indeed the youth of today, expect the world to be in 2050. At which time, those of us who are now teens will be senior members of our societies. Hoping that we will have the wisdom to work against the dynamics of life expectancy. Allow me to use the analogy of 12-year-old Seven Suzuki and her immense contribution in environmental conservation. Suzuki spoke of deforestation, chemicals in the air, the waste and the greed in our society, and the wanton destruction of animals and species and plant species that cannot be brought back. 27 years later, nothing much has changed. Many species of both the animal and plant kingdoms on the planet are now facing the risk of extinction thanks to environmental degradation. In 2050, I will be 44. I want my children to look around and mesmerize on the awesome environment that we will soon be bequeathing onto them. I want them to grow up and not worry over the melting ice, the ozone layer thinning, the greenhouse effect, and other life-threatening hazards. I don't want my children to imagine what polar bears and tigers were. I want them to be able to see and appreciate nature in its totality. I know that conservation of our resources require money, and I also believe that we have the resources to make the world a better place, but instead, we use that money for the wrong reasons. We compete in accumulation of wealth and amassing warfare. We think so much of ourselves and the present that we forget there will be generations after us, a generation to whom we owe a conservation of tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, I stand to speak for the children whose voices are most of the times not heard. I come here to fight for our generation, to do what Seven Suzuki did, to ask the adults and politicians of today to make the world a better place for us and for everyone. I am only one person. The Earth's population is 7.53 billion, and more than 80% of this population is poor. The empty rhetoric of bridging the gap between the poor and the rich is likely to widen by 2050 if we do not think beyond today. Climate change and other environmental disasters could put 3.1 billion people into extreme poverty by 2050 if no significant steps are taken. In my life, I wish to see the butterflies and the lions and elephants, but now I wonder if they will even exist for my children to see. Did you have to worry about these small things when you were my age? We act as if these petty little things are not co-heirs of the world with us humans. These animals have been here before us and might still be here when we are not. We need them as much as they need us, so let us conserve them. Poachers are killing these animals for selfish gain without thinking about the dwindling populations. But what do they gain? Do you ever ask yourselves that what will happen if all the wildlife is completely wiped out? This is what 2050 is likely to be like. More than 1 million animals and species will be lost by 2050. In South Africa, where many popular garden plants originate, 300 plant species were studied and more than 1/3 were expected to die out, including South Africa's national flower, the king protean. I'm only a child, yet I know if all the money spent on war was spent on ending poverty, what a wonderful place this earth would be. As a child, I used to love going to safaris, going to see the animals, and I fear as the world is changing and that the lions and elephants and rhinos are being poached, I worry if my children will be able to see these wonderful creatures. The oceans hold a beautiful mystery, but the oceans that we take our food from are being polluted. By 2050, oceans will carry more plastic than fish, and an estimated amount of 99% of seabirds would have ingested the plastic. The oceans can give us cures of more diseases, cures which will be derived from the very sea creatures that we destroy. My hope and dream, in the words of Bill Gates, is that there will be a cleaner environment and there will be no more poor countries. Diseases such as cancer will have a cure, and animals will not be carelessly killed. I also dream of a situation where the world invests in clean energy and relies almost entirely on renewable energy. By 2050, we should have cut greenhouse gas emissions by 80%. Driverless cars will be safer because they can drive closely behind other vehicles and eliminate human error, which causes 90% of car accidents in the United States. Driverless cars could result annually in 4.95 million fewer accidents, 30,000 fewer deaths, and 4.8 billion fewer commuting hours. They will also save Americans $500 billion per year in costs of car accidents, fuel, and lost productivity. The air could be thick with pollutions, worsening lung conditions and respiratory diseases. By 2050, 6 million people per year will die because of air pollution. Why? Because in addition to dirtier skies, warmer weather will speed up the chemical reaction that produce many of these pollutants. More than half of the world's population may not even have adequate access to water. Today, 1.1 billion people lack access to water, and 2.5 people, 36% of the world's population, live in regions of the world experiencing water stress. By 2050, however, this number will likely increase. Nearly 2 billion people will live in countries, mostly in the Middle East and North America, Africa, with absolute water scarcity. The types of fish we eat could also become extinct. If the world continues fishing at its current rate, all fish stocks could become extinct by 2050. Millions could be without food. Every decade, a warmer planet will decrease the amount of food we're able to produce around the globe by 2%. In case that doesn't sound a lot, it means that in the next 10 years, we'll lose 4,440,000 metric tons of food. Each year, we lose a huge chunk of rainforest, the same place where you get many of our life-saving drugs, to deforestation, most of which is caused by logging and farming. At this rate, between a third and nearly half of the rainforest will vanish by 2050. Superbugs could kill 10 million people each year. Right now, infections that no longer respond to the drugs we once used are killing 700,000 people a year. By 2050, that number is set to reach 10 million deaths each year. Because of this liberal use, antibiotics have become ever-present. Almost anywhere they can be found floating in the water and buried in the soil, unless the demand for antibiotic drops or the regulations on using them are tightened. We are set to live in a world where millions of people die from infections that can no longer be treated. A gradually warming climate will expand the range of pests carrying deadly disease. People who are affected will have little immunity from the disease. It is also projected that hurricanes could become more frequent and more severe. While climate change is best known for lifting sea levels and raising temperatures, it will also make storms far more intense. As the earth heats up, more water vapor, the fuel for storms, will enter the atmosphere. This combination could make hurricanes up to 300% more powerful by 2100. As oceans get warmer and northern ice starts to melt, the sea levels start to rise, causing more floods. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, we owe the future of this continent to the generations to come. Our sons and daughters will judge us on how committed we were to ensure to save the world we leave them is safe, more productive, and where human beings embrace the spirit of brotherhood and inclusivity. When the history of our land is told, let us not stand on the wrong side of history. Let us choose to improve our environments, to conserve the wildlife, and to be each other's keepers. I thank you all.